We've all dealt with this. Negative thinking. Not just having a problem in life, but thinking about it over and over and over again. Whether it's a relationship, it's money, it's your past. Waking up in the morning, still thinking about it. Go to brush your teeth, still thinking about it. Taking a shower, still thinking about it. And by the end of it, you're worked up. You're really worked up. You're actually tight. And you get to some dark places. I mean, you get to some dark places. If you've ever heard the advice, be easy with yourself, be kind to yourself, be gentle. Okay, I do the opposite, okay? I'm never enough for myself. I always have a hypothetical ideal where I should be in the world. I compare myself to other people. I do all of the wrong things, okay? And it's not like I'm thinking about something and then solving the problem, right? I'm not using all this negative thinking as energy to actually solve it. Instead, I'm just playing it to myself. Think about it again, think about it again, think about it again. As if the mind is like our enemy because it's just dragging us down. So what is actually going on here? Recently on Tom Bilyeu's podcast, Impact Theory, he had on Joe Dispenza. And Tom, my friend, this might be the interview of the year in 2018. Dispenza breaks down how all of our negative ruts have a few key ingredients, and that we can actually look at these ingredients, empathize with them, and then flip the whole thing around. The same system that drags us into the dirt can lift us into the heavens. Okay, is that something you're interested in? That's something I'm interested in. So what does that look like? He talks about a few major ingredients. He talks about 1, stress and our survival hormones. 2, thought, the power of thought, the power of our imagination. And 3rd, he talks about the past and our subconscious mind holding on to different memories, and how these 3 key parts of what has allowed us to live and evolve through all of these years is now turned against us. It all starts off with stress.
All organisms in nature can tolerate short-term stress. You know, a deer gets chased by a pack of coyotes. When it outruns the coyotes, it goes back to grazing and the event is over. And the definition of stress is when your brain and body are knocked out of balance, out of homeostasis. The stress response is what the body innately does to return itself back to order.
So to understand stress, Joe Dispenza gives this example of a deer. When a deer is grazing, it's relaxed, it's restful. And then if it sees a pack of coyotes, what happens? Well, inside the brain of the deer, it flips into stress. It flips into survival mode. And as what happens is there's both a rise in cortisol and a decline in melatonin. And this results in 2 different effects at the same time. One is a lack of restfulness. Instead, it moves into a wired, adrenaline-like state. And second, its attention focuses. It narrows. The deer is not thinking about grazing anymore. It's thinking about one thing: the coyotes, and getting away from the coyotes. Human beings, same kind of thing. If you've ever been up at night, tossing and turning, and you're kind of wired and you're uncomfortable and you can't sleep, you can't relax, must think about past relationship, must worry about money, right? It's the same thing. You're in stress. You're in survival mode. You're wired and your focus is narrow. Now, the interesting thing here is that there's nothing actually wrong with short-term stress. In fact, it helps us get out of danger. The problem is when stress is left on, when that switch is left flipped, and we're day in, day out with our focus staring at something negative and with our adrenaline running. And the second issue, we tend to think about our problems.
Human beings, because of the size of the neocortex, we can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. We can think about our problems and turn on those chemicals. In a sense, if you're sitting down and you start thinking about some future worst case scenario that you're conjuring up in your mind, and you begin to feel the emotion of that event, your body doesn't know the difference between the event that's taking place in your world, outer world, and what you're creating by emotion or thought alone.
Because of the size of our prefrontal cortex, we have all this power to think, all this power to imagine, which could be used for, creating new tools and visions and futures. What do we use it for? We bring up the coyote again. And I know I've been here, I'm thinking about ex-girlfriend, what happened, why didn't that work out, what she said to me. I'm replaying that conversation when it all went down. We can actually turn on the stress hormones by thought alone. And now, because you're stressed out, you actually check in with yourself and you say, ooh, I'm stressed out. My cortisol's high. Something must be wrong with me because I'm actually stressed out. Not to mention that I'm also blocking out all of the positive things. And it's hard to see out of it. So imaginary coyotes lead to real stress, and then real stress leads to more negative thinking. Because now you're in a rut about being in a rut. If you've ever had that feeling like, am I ever going to be okay? Am I ever going to be happy and just regular and normal? You're doing it. You're reacting to the fact that you're stressed out. But that is not all. We need to understand the third ingredient to really understand why this is happening to us. And this is where the subconscious mind is, right? So if the conscious mind, it has that ability to think. The subconscious mind, it's holding on to past traumas.
People, when they have an event, what they do is they keep recalling the event because the emotions of stress hormones, the survival emotions, are saying pay attention to what happened because you want to be prepared if it happens again. Turns out most people spend 70% of their life living in survival and living in stress, so they're always anticipating the worst case scenario based on a past experience.
So how does this affect the rut? Well, your thought is influenced by your past traumas. So if you have an issue with authority and you're going into work every day, you may hate your boss a little extra because of a past experience. Or if you're going out to a bar, you may be holding on to those, feelings of rejection of the past. And so what happens is those feelings influence your thought. So your past hijacks your thought. It flips on your survival hormones, stress. Now you're stressed out. Now that leads to more negative thinking. Dispenza says the average person spends 70% of their lives in survival mode, running from coyotes. 70% of our time. So, where could the silver lining possibly be?
So if it's possible that our thoughts could make us sick, is it possible that our thoughts could make us well? And the answer is absolutely yes. If you're not being defined by a vision of the future, then you're left with the old memories of the past and you will be predictable in your life.
As Dispenza lays out, if we're able to substitute our past traumas, which are emotional and visual, with future visions that are emotional and visual, then those future visions can hijack our thought and turn on, instead of stress, the opposite of stress, which he calls creation mode, which is characterized by low cortisol and therefore a relaxed state with a nice open awareness, creative, not focused on any coyotes. These good feelings lead to more positive thinking. Positive thinking then turns on more good feelings, and a cycle begins in the positive direction toward more and more freedom. And he talks about how there's essentially a two-step process in flipping this system around. One step is what he calls planting a new vision, planting new plants. That's using our conscious mind's imagination for thinking of that positive future vision. And the second part is pulling out the weeds. That is using our conscious mind's not thought function, not imagination, but using our awareness function to shed light. To shed light on what? To shed light on our past traumas and any thinking patterns we're having. So when you're shedding light on past traumas, just think about regular old therapy, talking about it with a friend, writing it out. And when we think about shedding that light on our negative thinking, on our thinking patterns, we can think about meditation. We can think about taking a deep breath and seeing life for what it is. Seeing those moments of imaginary coyotes for what they are. And so it's not that in life we're not trying to actually solve our problems. Of course we are. The question is, how do we get out of a rut? Well, a rut is when you're thinking negatively, feeling negatively, and that leads to thinking negatively, grounded in the past. Well, the anatomy of bliss, of freedom, of happiness is when you've got a future vision that you're excited about and it's grounding you in a positive vision. That's turning on creation mode, and that's leading to more positive thinking. And as the days go on, it builds and builds and builds, and now this is the anatomy of bliss, of freedom, of happiness. So we're going to break down what it's like to visualize the future, awareness of the past, and awareness of negative thinking in future videos, but this gives us a nice diagnosis of what the hell is going on here. I hope this helps. Welcome back to Told Nuggets 2019. Let's have a great year.